What's up, Westfield?
We're here to talk about ways you can integrate technology into your day-to-day to help you be techie as heck.
I'm Kristin Morris.
I'm Shelley Knapp.
And I'm Lynda Horner.
And this is your TechRocks podcast. On today's episode, we plan to talk about making space. So how are you making space in your personal lives for things that matter? How are we making space in our classrooms for things that matter? We talked last week about habit stacking a lot and how we can be purposeful about planning that. Shelley, what did we talk about a little bit?
So we examined how to double up to accomplish more. So we had that amazing share of your ab workout while you brushed your teeth.
You're welcome.
To learn how to build in those intentional moments where something that we otherwise did not think that we had time for, that we could not accomplish, we're now able to accomplish because we're making space for something new.
With habit stacking.
Yeah.
So we wanted to think a little bit more and elaborate more on that making the space. So we just actually finished watching a little video on this jar and the philosophy behind what we're putting in our jar. So in this video that we watched, we had this jar. And so this teacher comes in front of his students and he has an empty jar. And students are super intrigued. And he begins by putting large rocks in the jar until it's full. And he asks the students, he says, is the jar full? And of course, all the students were like, yeah, absolutely, the jar is full. And so then the teacher pulls out some pebbles. And he takes the pebbles and he pours them into the jar, clearly filling in some of those cracks and crevices that are left open. And the students say, well, yeah, now the jar is full. So next he pulls out some sand and he puts it in, asks the students, is the jar full? And they said, yeah, the jar is definitely full at this point. And then he pulls out water. And he tops off the jar with this water, and now this jar is completely full. And it talks a lot about prioritizing, about finding ways to find out what matters so your jar is full with the right things, if you will. And so today we wanted to focus a little bit on that idea of these big rocks in our lives, what we're filling in with these little pebbles and the sand, and finally the water. And so we wanted to take a moment to think about our own lives and think about the big rocks and the things that matter most to us, and finding that space to make sure that our jar is filled first with those big rocks. And I wanted to lean into Lynda a little bit. We were chatting earlier about ways that she makes this happen to ensure that her jar is mostly filled with these big rocks, these meaningful pieces of her lives. Because if this teacher had put in those pebbles first, what would have happened?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we get in that rut where we are filling our jar first with sand and pebbles because we think, we got to get this done, right? I have these chores to do. I have laundry to get done. I have to get to that grocery store. And we fill our jar and then we don't have any space for the big rocks. So I think it's really important that we really reflect on what is most important to us and make sure that we are focusing on that, making it purposeful. For me, that would be family. I think a lot of times when you're teaching, especially obviously during the school year, you're worried about grading and lesson plans. And yeah, that has to be done before the kids walk in the next day. But you can't give up your whole night to do that. Like, how can you prioritize so that you're not missing out on your own family's lives, your own kids' sports and activities? And so I just make it a point that when I'm at work, but when I'm at home, family's first, and try to live that in my life daily as best as I can to make room for my big rocks.
All other professions, there's an endpoint to the day.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, like you have a 9-to-5 job and then you're off the clock. Teaching is that outlier field where you could really go down a rabbit hole with how much you invest in your classroom. And so finding that work-life balance, knowing what rocks need to fill up that jar on any given day to give you that sense of fulfillment. Otherwise you burn out. That's why teachers are leaving the field, because they're giving so much to their classrooms that there's an imbalance with what's in the jar.
Absolutely. And I like the way Lynda kind of filled us in, those pebbles and that sand. Those are the little bits of things, like we have to do them. They are part of our day. They are things that we need to get done. But finding where those pieces fit in to make room for those rocks, that family, the friends, the connections. And even if we're thinking about it, let's be honest, like our content is a big rock. We're a teacher and that's meaningful and that's part of our day. And that's why we do what we do. So our content is part of those big rocks. So today we're going to focus a little bit about talking about how technology specifically can help us find space and make space so we have those big rocks in place and that we are lessening the amount of pebbles and sand that we need to fill that jar. We want that jar to be as full as we can with the things that matter. And I know Shelley's been doing this Grinchmas at this time with some tech tools too. So I'm wondering if you have a couple ideas on how teachers can use technology to eliminate some of those pebbles, some of that sand, and make a little bit more space for the things that matter.
Well, I think also a big rock in a teacher's life, yes, content, but also student relationships is huge. And Lynda was saying earlier, you can't possibly meet with every student every day and form that relationship. And so a lot of technology is out there for students to have voice and choice and to form a relationship with teachers through that technology. So I love Book Creator as a creative element that a teacher could explore. I know you're a huge Book Creator.
I am. I think some people are convinced that I get paid, like a paid partnership.
Side hustle Book Creator.
Yeah. I do not, but Book Creator, if you're listening, I wouldn't mind.
I was say, feel free to sponsor this podcast.
But it's just a way for students to literally create a digital book, and it can be a back to school activity for you to get to know your students. And they share likes, dislikes, just personal hobbies, what they're into, and you just get a snapshot of that kid at the start, and you're little flipping through a book, and you're just grabbing those little snippets. And instead of taking 8 weeks to get to know somebody, now they've shared information with you that you get right at the start. And so that rock, why a lot of teachers go into the field is because they care about kids. And I feel like that rock then is sustained through that sort of tech tool.
Yeah, and in the video we watched too, that water piece, that last piece that kind of solidifies everything together, tops off the jar, is that connection and that meaning in our lives, and the joys and the room for joys. And I think you're right, is that technology can often build onto our rocks and put those boulders in place for us. And that water is that nice icing on the cake where we're connecting with students and we're finding a place where students want to connect, right? They want to connect in that digital space. Going back to Book Creator, though, I did want to say I'm actually working with a teacher right now, and she has a student who has a hard time speaking in class and engaging in class verbally. And so what's really cool is this student is able to take the iPad home and record at home. And this teacher and I got to experience this student's voice for the first time kind of together in this space. And it was like almost enough to make you tear up.
So special.
Right. And it was just such a way that this kid has a physical voice that he wants to share, but is finding difficult to share at the moment. And technology has made a place for that teacher, for that child to connect. And now our conversations are, how do we use this so this student can connect with other students in his or her classroom? How are they able to talk back and forth now? Can students leave messages for him or her on the book? Can this student leave a message, leave the room, and allow the message to be played while he or she is stepped out of the room? How can we make this work? And again, it's that little bit of technology, that voice recording. And then we're talking about, is there ways we can get this student on video? So then they're seeing the student talking at the same time while seeing the student. And it's just not something those kids get to do. So it's also giving those students to student connections in a way that technology can kind of fill that jar for that teacher and solidify some of those relationships. Is just a way that we wouldn't have without it.
I love that you said technology is like the water in the jar and how it connects everything together, because I think sometimes teachers think technology is a big boulder, right? They have to fill their jar with this technology, when really technology is that water that just kind of helps you with your boulders, right? So whether that is building those student relationships or presenting content, or just making the classroom more engaging, allowing students to create things. I really just feel like it's an important aspect to our jar that sometimes we forget to add the water. We forget the last step. And so our jar really isn't full until we add that final piece to it.
And I think that's a huge part of why Book Creator may never have been used by some teachers, or why some of our other district tech hasn't been picked up. It's because, I have to prep, I have to grade. But there are tech tools out there that help streamline that process. Like, you don't have to create a whole slide deck over your content anymore. You can get a slide deck generated for you instantly by any topic, by anything you attach. These tools exist so that more space is given to you in your day for you to use something like Book Creator to form those relationships with students. So I think the water that goes into the jar is kind of a twofold benefit. It is going to open up time on the prep front and even the grading front, and then it also can leave room for the student relationship and connection piece as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just really helps get that jar full of the things that matter, removing some of those pebbles, that sand, some of that chore out of what we're doing, and allow us to connect on a different level with multiple students, right? And students with different needs, students with different ideas and values, and we can kind of connect in there. And that homeschool connection too. I mean, because that's just building so much more of our relationships as well with that technology piece. So
There was an adage that I meant to share last time when we were talking about igniting passions, and it's that education is not the filling of the bucket, but it is the igniting of the flame. And I think making space this topic is so important to that last part about igniting the flame. If we don't find ways to fill our jar with the bigger rocks, then we're going to lose out on ways that we can inspire our students, because we're so focused on the day-to-day grind. And I meant to share that last time, and I was like, I just want to get it out there in the podcast ether, share it.
That kind of speaks to me because I'm thinking through, we've been having a conversation about our jars, but if we looked at it from a student's perspective, the jar was school. Where would technology fall? Is it a boulder, a pebble? What is it for our students? And I think a lot of times that's a piece we're missing as teachers. Like, this is their world.
It is a huge rock in their jar. It is a huge rock in their jar. That's such a good point, Lynda.
When we look at technology as being like one more thing, or I don't have time for it, or I'm going to do all the work for the kid with templates and not letting the kid explore and create on their own, we're really diminishing what they have in their jar and not letting them kind of pick those important pieces to them.
And
I think too, like with some of that, we almost make it a pebble or sand for them. This is one more thing they have to do, rather than that word create and design.
Speak it, girl.
We don't want to add those pebbles in the sand. We don't want one more thing for them to do. We want one more thing for them to engage in and ignite.
And ignite their
Look at
passion.
you use my adage.
Yeah, we want to add those boulders into their box or into their jars, because especially when that's coming down to learning, and for them that's so important and such a big piece of their day. They're with us, 7.5 hours, 8 hours of a day, 5 days a week. That's a lot of time.
It is.
And we want to be putting those rocks, those big boulders into their jars for them.
I think just human interaction in general. Like, how often do you think, when probably not in specific boulder, rock, pebble terms, but how often do you think about what fulfills somebody else that you're having a conversation with? I think we come in assuming that what's important to me is important to that other person. And I think you lose a lot of potential in what you could gain from even one conversation if you just inquired about those big rocks at the start. This would be a very cool little video, I think, to show even at the start of the year, and then to ask to create a book and showing what the boulders are with Book Creator, to learn about what's important.
So anyone wanting to Google it, it's the Rocks, Pebbles, and Sand story. And there's a couple different versions, and for what the rocks and pebbles, sand and water all stand for. The version that we watched, we really liked the water. It was that solidifying piece, the connection, the happiness, the joys, the small moments of humor. And I think that spoke to all three of us at the table today. But depending what you look up, they have little different definitions for each element, but the idea is the same between the rocks, pebbles, and sand story.
And when teachers are thinking about how to add that tech piece in, they're often thinking, I just do not have time to invest in learning a tool like Book Creator. because I have to get all of these other pebbles done. But this is why our position exists in the district to begin with. We are the water ladies. In fact, why don't we change our team name to the water team?
The water
Tis boat.
I think we do. It's not a lifeboat. It's the tis boat.
It's a yacht.
Come sail away. Come sail away.
We like singing on this podcast. We've
You're
gotten
welcome.
serenaded several times by you.
Yeah, and
But I that whole idea of somebody being there to help you curate sources, build resources, be an extra set of hands in the classroom so that you can learn while your students are learning. I think we want to be the master of our space, and that vulnerable space of not really knowing something when you're doing something with students is a hard space for teachers to be in. We're planners. We like our ducks in a row. But, letting somebody come in and take away that vulnerability and to have a safety net, that's what we're here for. And we're really eager to help. Like I'm chomping at the bit, folks.
I have an example about that, and it's with Book Creator too. I was in a
Book Creator, you better be tuned.
I know it. John, call us. John is our rep for Book Creator.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
We do like him. He's great.
He's awesome. I was in a classroom and they were doing Book Creator for the first time. And this teacher was, as you were saying, really nervous because it was the first time. She didn't really know the program well. She was worried about what if students ask me how to do something and I don't have the answer for it. And it came up, right? I was in the room as an extra set of hands, and a student wanted to know, I believe it was how to change the color of the font or something. And the teacher kind of looked over at me, and I actually was new to Book Creator too. I didn't know either. And so we just kind of made a statement to the class, hey, first kid to figure this out gets a scratch and sniff sticker. I mean, we had like 3 kids figured it out in less than a minute. So don't be afraid to try programs in your room that you're not an expert at, because the kids will figure it out. That's the best thing about kids. It's not that they're smarter than us in technology. It's that they're fearless. They don't mind exploring, clicking buttons. They realize they're not going to break anything. And I think sometimes adults, we worry that we'll mess something up. And kids don't have that fear. So,
they are curious clickers.
Yeah. Sometimes a little too clicker happy, but
And they might be curious, furious clickers.
but yeah. So anyway, but yeah, just fun little story of you don't need to be an expert. Let everybody explore. In fact, if you think about it, when do you learn the best? When you explore and learn it for yourself, when you make mistakes and figure out then how it really works, because you have a deeper understanding of it. So,
and then you get to teach someone else, right?
Yeah.
Teaching is the ultimate.
Oh, always have your best. Yeah. Those who figure it out, they become your classroom helpers.
Absolutely.
Anybody with their hand up, you say, helper, go help.
Well, I think the lesson learned today is that the TIS team may not be here to move mountains, but we are here to help you make space for those boulders inside of your jars. We want to help you make sure you have space for what matters most. But that's a wrap on today. So remember, stay techie as heck.